Hey, little champ, how are you feeling?
I'm great, thank you for coming.
Of course, you're very brave.
Thank you.
The entire Camp Nou held its breath. 80,000 people. Frozen. Not a single voice in the crowd. The scoreboard still ticking, the referee still on the field, the game still technically in progress. And yet, one man was walking away from it all. Not limping, not being escorted off. Walking. Slowly, deliberately, like a man who had already made the most important decision of his life, and nothing in the world was going to change it. Ronaldinho was leaving the field, in the middle of a match, and he wasn't looking back. But here's what nobody in that stadium could have known. 72 hours before that moment, a desperate mother had written a letter at 3 in the morning. A letter she never expected anyone to read. A letter that ended up in a trash can, and then changed everything. This is not a story about soccer. This is a story about what happens when a human being decides that the scoreboard doesn't matter, that the rules don't matter, that the only thing that matters is a 9-year-old boy with a smile that not even cancer could erase. Let's go back to the beginning. His name was Martin. He was 9 years old, and according to his doctors, he had weeks left to live. Leukemia had arrived 18 months earlier, quiet and merciless, the way it always does, stealing something precious before anyone even notices it's gone. Martin had fought back harder than anyone expected. 3 rounds of chemotherapy, 2 bone marrow transplants that failed, nights that stretched on forever, full of fever and fear and machines that beeped without stopping. But through all of it, through every single brutal moment, Martin never stopped smiling when someone mentioned soccer. His mother, Elena, worked as a cleaning woman in an office building in downtown Barcelona. His father had walked out when Martin was 4 years old. There was no money for tickets to the Camp Nou. There was barely enough money for anything. The Barcelona jersey Martin wore every single day was a knockoff, bought at a street market, with the number 10 printed slightly crooked on the back. But to Martin, that jersey was sacred. It might as well have been made of gold. Every night in his hospital room, he watched the games on a small television that a nurse had managed to borrow from another ward. And every time Ronaldinho touched the ball, every time that number 10 appeared on screen, Martin's eyes would light up with something the disease hadn't managed to reach yet. Something deep and untouchable. Something that reminded everyone around him that this child was still very much alive. 1 week before the match, Elena sat down and wrote a letter. It was 3 in the morning. Martin was asleep, connected to machines that breathed for him in the dark. Elena had been staring at the ceiling for hours, running out of ways to fight, running out of hope, running out of time. So she did the only thing she had left to do. She picked up a pen. The letter was simple. It said that her son was dying. It said that he had one dream, just one, before the end. To see Ronaldinho play, to sit inside the Camp Nou, even for just one game, pause and feel what it felt like to be part of something bigger than a hospital room. She said that dream was the only thing keeping Martin fighting. She folded the letter, put it in an envelope, and sent it to the Public Relations Department of Football Club Barcelona. Nobody read it. It got lost in a pile of hundreds of similar requests and eventually ended up in a recycling bin near the back of the office. That should have been the end of the story, but it wasn't. His name was Joseph. He was an older man, a maintenance worker at the Barcelona training facility, someone who had spent 30 years doing his job quietly and without recognition. He cleaned the offices. He took out the trash. He had seen players come and go, titles won and lost. Entire eras of the club passed through those hallways while he mopped floors, and nobody remembered his name. But Josep read every piece of paper before he threw it away. Old habit. He said he never wanted to accidentally throw out something important. He found Elena's letter on a Tuesday afternoon. He read it once. Then he read it again. Then he folded it carefully and put it in the front pocket of his work shirt and spent the rest of the day trying to figure out what to do with it. What he did next could have cost him his job. He knew it. He did it anyway. He waited for Ronaldinho outside the locker room after Thursday's training session. Elite players are surrounded by walls, agents, assistants, security protocols, impossible schedules. Josep understood all of that. He had worked around those walls for 3 decades, but he also understood something else. Ronaldinho was different. He had watched him stay late signing autographs for kids when every other player had already left. He had watched him learn the names of the groundskeepers, remember their birthdays, joke around with the people that everyone else walked right past. When Ronaldinho came out of the locker room and saw this older man in a work uniform standing nervously in the hallway, he stopped. "Mr. Ronaldinho," Josep said, his voice shaking slightly. "I'm sorry to bother you, but there's something you need to read." Ronaldinho looked at him for a moment. Then he sat down on a bench in the hallway, just sat right down, and said, "Read it to me. My written Spanish isn't perfect yet." Josep read Elena's letter out loud. When he finished, Ronaldinho sat in silence for a full minute. The hallway was empty. The lights hummed overhead. Those eyes that were always sparkling with something joyful had gone somewhere else entirely. Then he asked a single question. Could the boy come to Saturday's match? Josep shook his head. The doctors had already said no. Martin was too weak. The risk of infection in a stadium full of 80,000 people was enormous. The physical stress alone could be fatal. Ronaldinho nodded slowly. He stood up, shook Josep's hand, said thank you, and walked away. Josep stood there watching him go, already telling himself the story he had told himself 100 times before. Stars are busy. Promises are forgotten before the next training session. He had done what he could. That was enough. At 6 in the morning the next day, the hospital phone rang. It was the Barcelona Football Club. They were sending a private medical team, paid for anonymously, to evaluate whether Martin could be safely transported to the Camp Nou for Saturday's match. The team would include a pediatric oncologist, an immunology specialist, and a fully equipped medical ambulance that would remain stationed outside the stadium for the entire game. Elena stood in the hallway holding the phone, unable to speak. "Who is paying for this?" she finally asked. The answer was simple. A friend. Saturday morning, Martin woke up not knowing what was about to happen. His mother told him she had a surprise. She told him to put on his jersey. His favorite one, the crooked number 10 on the back. Martin smiled that smile, the one the disease had never managed to touch. The transfer was complicated. Martin traveled on a special stretcher, connected to portable monitors, with a nurse holding his hand the entire way. The doctor had been clear with Elena. If anything went wrong, they were leaving immediately. No second chances, no exceptions. They arrived at the Camp Nou 90 minutes before kickoff. The club had set up a special seat for Martin in the north stands, close to an emergency exit, with direct access for the stretcher if needed. There was a thermal blanket, a portable oxygen supply, and 3 medical staff dedicated exclusively to monitoring his condition every second he was there. When Martin saw the field for the first time in his life, he cried, not from sadness, from a kind of happiness so intense his small, exhausted body couldn't contain it. Elena cried too. She had not seen her son look that alive in months. The match began. Barcelona was dominating. The crowd was roaring with every touch, and Martin, wrapped in his blanket, eyes locked on the number 10 moving across the field below him, seemed to have completely forgotten that he was sick. Ronaldinho played beautifully, but something about the way he moved was different that night. Between plays, his eyes kept drifting toward the north stands, searching for something, searching for someone. In the 32nd minute, Ronaldinho scored. A bicycle kick that made 80,000 people lose their minds. His teammates ran to celebrate with him. The crowd was chanting his name. But Ronaldinho didn't celebrate. He turned toward the north stands, found the section where he knew Martin was sitting, and with both hands pressed over his heart, he bowed. The first half ended 2-1 in favor of Barcelona. During halftime, something strange happened in the locker room. Ronaldinho didn't talk tactics with his teammates. He didn't listen to the coach's instructions. Instead, he pulled one of the equipment staff aside and asked for something unusual. A permanent marker. Nobody asked what it was for. He was handed one without a word. Ronaldinho picked up the match ball, the official game ball, the one he had just scored that incredible goal with, and wrote something on it. No one could see what. He put it in his personal bag and walked back out for the second half. The game continued. Valencia equalized. Barcelona pushed back in front. The tension was building. The crowd was electric. But up in the north stands, something was changing. The nurse monitoring Martin noticed it first. His vital signs were fluctuating, and the emotion of the moment was too much for his body. His heart rate was climbing higher than it should. His blood pressure was unstable. The doctor leaned toward Elena and spoke quietly. "We should think about leaving. The stress is becoming too much." Elena looked at her son. Martin's eyes were wide open, tracking every single movement of the number 10 on the field below, as if his entire existence depended on not missing a single second of this. "Please," Elena whispered. "Just a few more minutes. This is all he asked for." The doctor nodded reluctantly. 5 minutes, he said. Not one more. Then came the 78th minute. Barcelona was attacking down the left side. Ronaldinho received the ball near the penalty area. He had space to shoot. He had open teammates. He had every reason in the world to go for goal. Oh, he stopped. He literally stopped moving. The ball rolled a few feet away and was picked up by a Valencia defender. The referee blew his whistle, confused, signaling some non-existent foul because he had no other way to explain what he was seeing. But Ronaldinho wasn't looking at the referee. He wasn't looking at the ball. He was looking at the north stands. He had seen the nurse leaning over Martin. He had seen the doctor moving in with a worried expression. He had seen Elena put her hands over her face, and in that moment, soccer stopped mattering. Ronaldinho began walking toward the stands. The referee ran after him, shouting that play needed to continue. Frank Rijkaard stood up from the bench, making desperate gestures. The Valencia players stood frozen on the field, not understanding what they were watching. Ronaldinho did not stop. He jumped the advertising board, climbed the stairs to the north section, and the security staff stepped aside without a word. There was something in the way he moved that told everyone watching, "This is not something you stop." He reached Martin. The boy was pale, paler than usual. His eyes were closing. The effort of the entire evening had been too much for a body already carrying so much. Elena was crying softly, pleading with her son to hold on. Ronaldinho knelt down beside the stretcher. He took Martin's hand in both of his, those hands that had touched millions of soccer balls, that had created magic on fields across the entire world. They were now wrapped around the cold, thin fingers of a dying 9-year-old boy. Martin opened his eyes, and he smiled. That smile, the one that nothing had ever been able to take away. Ronaldinho leaned in close and whispered something in Martin's ear. No camera caught it. No microphone picked it up. Not a single one of the 80,000 people in that stadium heard what was said. Only Martin knew, and Martin kept it. Then Ronaldinho did something more. He pulled his jersey over his head, the official Barcelona number 10 jersey, soaked with the sweat of 78 minutes of soccer. He laid it gently across Martin's chest. The boy closed his eyes, but this time, his face was peaceful. The doctor stepped forward, checked Martin's pulse, and looked at Elena. "Stable," he said quietly. "He's stable." Ronaldinho stayed on his knees beside Martin for what felt like forever, but was only a few minutes. The match was suspended. The referee had stopped protesting. The players of both teams stood motionless at the center of the field, watching. Then it started. One person began to clap, then another, then 10, then 100, then 1,000, until the entire Camp Nou, all 80,000 people, was on their feet applauding, not for a goal, not for a victory, for a human being who chose to kneel beside a child instead of chasing a ball. The Valencia players applauded too. The goalkeeper took off his gloves and set them on the ground to clap with both hands. The Valencia captain touched his chest with his fist. Ronaldinho eventually rose to his feet. He kissed Martin's forehead. He hugged Elena, who was shaking so hard she could barely stand. Then he walked slowly back toward the field. The referee approached him. "According to the rules," he said quietly, "I should give you 2 yellow cards for leaving the field without permission, for deliberately delaying the game." Ronaldinho looked at him without saying a word. The referee put the cards back in his pocket. "Play on," he said. The final minutes of the match passed in a kind of unreality. Barcelona won 3-2. Ronaldinho didn't touch the ball again. He didn't need to. He had already done the most important thing he would ever do on a soccer field. When the journalists surrounded him after the game, asking why. Why did you leave the field? Why did you risk everything? Why did you walk away from a match that was still being played? Ronaldinho gave them an answer that would be repeated for years. "Soccer is beautiful," he said, "but there are things more important than soccer. Today I learned that the real victory isn't on the scoreboard. It's making someone smile when the world has given them every reason to stop." 3 weeks later, Ronaldinho walked into Martin's hospital room. No cameras, no journalists, no fanfare. Just him, a sports bag, and that smile that made every room feel different. He pulled out the match ball, the official game ball. He handed it to Martin. The boy read what was written on it in permanent marker. The words that Ronaldinho had written alone in the locker room at halftime, while his teammates talked tactics and the coaches drew diagrams on whiteboards. For Martin, the bravest warrior I have ever met, your smile is my greatest victory. With love, Ronaldinho. Martin held that ball against his chest and did not let go for a very long time. The doctors had given Martin weeks. They were wrong. Martin lived for 14 more months. 14 months during which Ronaldinho visited him every time the Barcelona schedule allowed it. 14 months of messages, of drawings, of inside jokes that nobody else understood. 14 months during which a dying child and the greatest soccer player in the world built a friendship that neither of them ever talked about publicly, because some things are too real for press conferences. The day Martin died, Ronaldinho was in training camp with the Brazilian national team preparing for a qualifying match. When the call came, he left the camp immediately. He flew to Barcelona. He arrived just in time to say goodbye. He did not speak to the journalists waiting outside. He walked past them without acknowledgement and went inside to stand next to Elena, holding her hand while she said farewell to her son. In the casket with Martin, there were 3 objects: the Barcelona jersey that Ronaldinho had placed across his chest that night at the Camp Nou, the match ball with the handwritten dedication that Martin had read so many times the ink was beginning to fade, and a photograph taken by someone in the crowd that night, showing the exact moment Ronaldinho knelt beside the stretcher and reached for Martin's hand. That photograph hangs today in the Barcelona Football Club Museum, not in the trophy room, not beside the league titles or the Champions League cups. It hangs in a separate space dedicated to the moments that define what the club truly represents beyond the game. The plaque beneath it reads simply, "The night soccer became love." Joseph, the maintenance worker who had found the letter in the trash and risked his job to hand it to the right person, I retired 2 years after that match. On his last day, Ronaldinho showed up in the locker room with a gift, a framed jersey, not a replica, but the actual jersey from the match against Valencia, before Ronaldinho had placed it on Martin. It was signed by every player on the team, with a personal message written at the top. For Joseph, the man who taught me that the most important letters are not the ones that get sent, but the ones that get saved from the trash. Thank you for reminding me who I want to be, Ronaldinho. Joseph cried for the first time in 30 years of working at that club. Elena never fully recovered from losing Martin, but she also never lost the connection that had grown from that night. Ronaldinho established a foundation in Martin's name, the Martin Foundation, dedicated to helping children with terminal illnesses experience moments connected to the sports they love. The foundation has fulfilled more than 3,000 wishes since it was created. Elena works today as a coordinator for that foundation. Every time she helps a child meet the athlete they have always dreamed of, she thinks of her son, and she smiles. The smile that Martin taught her to keep even in the darkest moments. There is one last thing that almost nobody knows. What Ronaldinho whispered into Martin's ear that night at the Camp Nou, while the entire world watched in silence. Martin told his mother a few weeks before he died. The words were these: "Don't be afraid, champion. Real heroes aren't the ones who score goals. They're the ones who keep smiling when the game gets hard. And you are the greatest hero I have ever known." Martin held on to those words every day for the 14 months that followed. He held on to them in the moments of worst pain, in the middle of the nights when the fear was loudest, when it seemed like the disease was finally winning. And every single time he remembered them, he smiled. Because a genius of the game had looked him in the eye and told him the truth, that the real measure of greatness is not found in any title, any trophy, or any scoreboard. It is found in the capacity to reach another human being at the deepest possible level and leave them better than you found them. Ronaldinho did not just play soccer. He reminded every single person who witnessed that night. In the stadium, watching on television, and reading about it the next morning, that behind every jersey, behind every packed stadium, behind every celebrated goal, there are human stories waiting to be seen, waiting to be held, waiting for someone to kneel down and say, "I see you. You matter. You are not invisible." That is a legacy no trophy can measure. That is why we remember him not only for how he played, we remember him for how he loved. Some stories don't end when the final whistle blows. Some stories go on long after the cameras turn off, long after the crowds go home, long after the score is forgotten. This is one of those stories. Ronaldinho never spoke publicly about that night. When journalists brought it up, he would smile and change the subject, as if that moment was too sacred to be reduced to a headline. 80,000 people felt something that evening that went beyond language. They felt what it means to be human. And because of a child named Martin, so did the rest of the world. If this story moved you even a little, hit that subscribe button right now and leave a comment below, telling us what you thought. Stories like this deserve to be heard by as many people as possible. So share this video with someone who needs it today. We cover the moments in sports that never make the highlight reels, but stay with you forever. Subscribe so you never miss one.